In Wereth, Belgium, near the end of World War II, German SS troops captured 11 black American soldiers and killed them. The perpetrators were never prosecuted for war crimes, and family members say the massacre was never properly acknowledged. Now, nearly 59 years later, a group of Belgian citizens is joining with some American vets to look back and remember. Eileen LeBlanc reports.
Each year, former members of the 106th Army Infantry gather for a reunion. At this one, held recently in Cincinnati, they're joined by two people from Belgium. After almost 60 years, Ada Ricken still remembers the day her town was liberated after 4 years of German occupation, and she sees these vets as her liberators.
You must understand the hate of this and the misery of these 4 years of occupation, and then the joy we felt to be liberated.
Even though Belgium declared itself neutral before the war, Germans had moved in and taken over the country. The Battle of the Bulge took place in the frozen Belgium countryside, dense with forest, fog, and snow. The U.S. Army's 106th was spread way too thin. A surprise concentrated German attack on the front pushed a 40-mile bulge back into the defensive line. Artillery units, which were supposed to be well behind the ground fighting, found themselves eye to eye with German tanks. Half of the ranks of the 106th were killed, wounded, or captured. Former POW John Gatens was a gunner with the 106th.
With that kind of weather, a lot of the boys didn't make it. They just couldn't take it.
Another artillery unit, black soldiers with white officers, was the 333rd with their powerful howitzer guns. They, too, were overrun, and Willie Alphonse still remembers the day he was forced to surrender.
We held them off until about 8 o'clock that morning, and they backed off and started throwing mortar fire on us, and we had to give up then.
Alphonse and 15 other GIs were sent to a Stalag prison camp, but some in his division managed to get away, including 11 who made it on foot to the tiny hamlet of Wereth, where they stopped at a farmhouse for help. Ada Ricken, who lived nearby, was told this story by Wereth's residents.
They were frozen and wet, and they came there, and the men let them in. They gave them to eat. But a woman from a nearby village, she warned the SS.
The SS knocked on the door of the farmhouse. The black soldiers raised a piece of white cloth on one of their 2 rifles and surrendered. They were then made to sit outside in the freezing cold before being marched to what became their graves.
And then suddenly they said they had to run in front of their car, and about 500-600 meters from that farm, they massacred them.
After the black soldiers were massacred by the SS, their bodies lay in the gully untouched and covered with snow. A month later, the Army conducted a preliminary investigation. All evidence, quoting here from an Army report, indicates a ruthless mass butchery of the Negro soldiers. This is obvious, it states, by the multiple hideous wounds found on most of the victims. But the report also called for the file to be closed, concluding it was unlikely that the perpetrators could be found, despite the fact that the SS had been clearly identified at the farmhouse and it was known which panzer unit was in the area. Military historian Robert Houston teaches at the University of South Alabama.
No one was brought to justice, and the crime wasn't pursued simply because the troops were black. So what this is typical racism, which was rampant in the U.S. military.
Many of the victims' families were simply told that the GIs were missing in action. Eventually, 4 of the bodies were returned to the United States for burial. The rest were interred in Europe, including that of James Aubrey Stewart. His great-nephew, Rick Rhodes, says his family never had a chance to understand the extreme sacrifice that Stewart had made.
What I would want can never happen because my family doesn't know. They're dead. My mother's dead. His mother's dead. His aunts, his uncle, everybody. They don't know.
Spearheaded by Ada Ricken, a small group of Belgians near Wereth is working on a memorial for the massacre site. They've received financial support from a black officers group and from former members of the 106th Infantry. There's also an effort to locate other family members so that they too will know, at long last, what their loved ones endured. For NPR News, I'm Eileen LeBlanc.